Thank you very much. Has the killing of a Muslim shopkeeper in Glasgow exposed hatred and prejudice within the Muslim community in this country? Police have described the murder of Assad Shah last month as religiously prejudiced. Mr. Shah was an Ahmadiyya Muslim. They're a small sect who many other Muslims think don't belong to Islam because of their different views on the Prophet Muhammad. This programme has been told by one Muslim group that they're increasingly worried that Ahmadis may be attacked by other more extreme Muslims. We'll be talking about this in a few minutes, but first, BBC Asian Network reporter Atta Ahmed has been to the UK's biggest Ahmadi mosque. Here's a short version of his film.
They said, "We will cut you into pieces, we will break your legs, and we will even cut your neck. Then we will become satisfied."
What we're seeing here are targeted views saying Ahmadiyyas are less than animals. Ahmadiyyas should have no human right. This is unacceptable. This is completely unacceptable.
Every sect believes that they're the right sect, and what the other sect is practicing is incorrect.
They don't like us because of what we believe. They say I'm not a Muslim.
Friday prayers at the Beit al-Futuh Mosque in South London. It's the largest in the UK, and thousands of worshippers have come together to hear the weekly sermon. But they'll have to be patient. It could be a while before they're able to get into the mosque.
It's not usual to see such a high amount of security like this at mosques here in the UK, but the worshippers seem to appreciate it, and that's because there's a real feeling there may be a risk from some militant Muslims.
Well, it's airport-style security, and we need to be vigilant and look after those who are coming here. And, you know, we're not a professional outfit like the police, but we do the best that we can.
Do you think the level of security you've got here, it's excessive?
It's proportionate in accordance with the risk. So we need to take the relevant precautions, and we don't think it's excessive. Once people understand the reasons, it's a lot easier, and they know there is a genuine threat.
37-year-old Farouk is an Ahmadi Muslim. There are about 30,000 others like him in the UK, but some Muslims don't recognise Ahmadis as being part of their religion. It's down to Ahmadis believing in a follower prophet after Muhammad, who came to revive his teachings. It's a contentious issue among some Muslims who believe Muhammad was the last prophet. It's this belief that gets Ahmadis labelled as apostates, disbelievers, and in extreme cases, worthy of being killed.
Well, the threats we've seen in Pakistan in 2010, you had the two Lahore attacks where our mosque, there were suicide bombers there, 86 people were killed. And we don't want to see that here.
Do you think there's a chance that could happen?
Well, we've seen recently that there's an increase in sectarian violence, promotion of ideology and hate, and we've seen what's going on in other parts of the world.
In Pakistan, Ahmadis aren't allowed to hold Friday prayers, openly preach, or even call themselves Muslims. If they do, they could face up to 3 years in prison under the country's infamous blasphemy laws.
Why do you think there are some groups out there who don't consider you to be Muslim?
You need to ask them that. That's for them to answer. I mean, as far as we're concerned, we're Muslims. We follow Islam and nothing else.
Anisa came to the UK in 2012 with her 15-year-old son Bilal. She'd been receiving death threats from her neighbours in Pakistan because of her beliefs as an Ahmadi. Anisa doesn't want us to show her face, or Bilal's, because she's worried about being targeted.
So when you receive these threats from extremist Muslims, what do they say to you?
Once I was outside, they said, "We will cut you into pieces, we will break your legs, and we will even cut your neck. Then we will become satisfied." They do not consider us Muslim, but we are Muslim, God knows better.
Anisa hired a solicitor to take on her asylum case when she got to the UK. He happened to be Muslim, and she began to face problems.
When I hired solicitor. Rather than solicitor, he was a good preacher. He preached me, he emailed me, why you are living in fool's paradise? Come, leave this religion and come to the actual faith of Islam.
His version of Islam?
Yeah. It was not his duty to preach me at that moment because he was my representative. Its duty was only to represent me, nothing else.
How did that make you feel? You paid a solicitor to represent you, and instead he's preaching to you, telling you that you're not a Muslim.
At that time I felt I'm not in UK, I'm living in Pakistan. The same condition, the same things.
Anisa and Bilal's asylum cases are still ongoing. Bilal's adapted well to his new life in the UK, though he can't fully shake off what he's left behind.
I mean, what impact do you think it's had on you growing up as an Ahmadi Muslim in Pakistan?
I mean, it taken away my childhood from me. I mean, childhood's supposed to be fun, something, you know, you fit in with the society, make new friends. I mean, I couldn't do that. Like, I always had to stay at home just because, you know, because I'm the Muslim. My mum was scared to let me go out, and I was even feeling scared in my own home because I knew that someone can just come and kidnap me.
I mean, what's life in the UK like for you now?
Much better, you know, like I said, a lot more freedom. You know, you can fit in with the society no matter what race you are, what skin colour do you have, and you know what religion you have, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
And I mean, what if your case is rejected and you do have to go back to Pakistan? What's going to happen then?
I would lose myself, you know, like I wouldn't even know who am I, because if I go back to Pakistan, I don't know what they're going to do to me. I'll just lose myself, I think.
That'd be great, thanks. Ahmadi shopkeeper Asad Shah at the counter of his store in Glasgow. The 40-year-old was killed in March, a killing that police say they believe was religiously prejudiced. Some fear the religious intolerance towards Ahmadis seen in countries like Pakistan is now beginning to take root here. From the beginning of April, police forces in England and Wales have been required to record anti-Muslim hate crimes as a separate category to try and get a better idea of the scale of the problem. Fiyaz Mughal is from Tell Mama, a group which monitors Islamophobic abuse in the UK. The group claim they're seeing more sectarian incidents being reported to them, both on and offline, with a particular increase in anti-Ahmadi abuse over the last 12 months.
We've had material where they are regarded as individuals who should be exterminated, calling Ahmadiyyas cockroaches, calling Ahmadiyyas monkeys, calling Ahmadiyyas individuals who should not have any right to life.
Do you think things will get better, or do you expect the number of incidents which come your way to stay the same?
We will sadly continue to see a rise. The issue of Ahmadiyyas being non-Muslims is quite significant in Muslim communities, in mainstream thought. Now, we don't have a problem with theological difference and debate. People can disagree who is a Christian or Muslim or Jew. What that leads to, some of these disagreements, is targeted hate and vilification of the Ahmadiyya community, and that is just unacceptable.
Despite what groups like Tell Mama claim are increasing levels of anti-Ahmadi abuse, some are trying to help bring about positive change. 26-year-old Abdul Qudus is a young British Ahmadiyya Imam. He makes a point to actively engage with people from other religions, those of no faith, and Muslims from different sects.
Now we find that in the UK, there's a more voiced opinion about different sects. People are openly declaring other sects to be, i.e. non-Muslims, disbelievers. Rather than looking at the commonalities between each individual, each community, they want to see the differences, and then they hold those differences against each group.
Do you think there needs to be more dialogue between different sects and groups within Islam in the UK?
Definitely. I mean, just by making more practical steps, dialogue, inviting each other to mosques, community places, and sharing a meal together maybe once in a while as well. These things will, of course, break the tension and cause a reason for people to unite. And I think at this very moment, Islam as a whole is being attacked and defamed. So it's even more vital for the Muslim Ummah to come together and unite.
You're a qualified imam, you've studied the subject for 7 years.
Yeah.
How does it feel when someone says to you, you're not Muslim, you don't know anything about Islam?
It's annoying, to say the least, but I always come from that angle that they just don't know, they're ignorant. The thing is that they've been taught this from day one, and you can't blame someone who's actually had that indoctrinated in them. Hopefully, the one thing that I always say, that if you get to know me, then you realise if I'm a Muslim or not, by my practices, by my actions.
Some groups are openly against Ahmadi Muslims because of their beliefs, but say it's not about promoting violence, spreading hate, or doing anything illegal. The Khatam an-Nubuwwat Academy, or Finality of the Prophets, is one of them. The group share a name with an organisation linked to a mosque in Stockwell, where leaflets calling for Ahmadis to be killed were found, but the academy claim it has nothing to do with them.
Anyone who says they should be punished according to the law. Catch them, prosecute them, and put them in jail. I don't want to be associated with anybody who advocates any kind of physical harm against any person in any jurisdiction of the world that is against the law of the land.
But you don't think Ahmadis are Muslim, do you?
According to us, according to the Muslims of the world, the consensus is that they are not Muslims.
Some Ahmadis are worried problems in Pakistan are now making the way over to the UK.
So again, this is blowing it out of proportion, out of context, and taking the problems of one country and making them into the problems of another country.
The government plans to try and tackle sectarian hatred under its counter-extremism strategy, published late last year. In a statement, the Home Office told us, "It's unacceptable for any organisation or individual in this country to promote hatred and condone violence. Britain is built on values like democracy, respect and tolerance. These values unite us and help our society to thrive." Heavy security will continue to be a feature of some Ahmadi mosques for the near future, though many are praying a time will come when it's no longer needed.
It's not fair for us. It's totally unfair. We are human beings. Let us live like a human. It's too much for us, and we feel ourselves helpless.
Well, let's talk now to two Ahmadi Muslims, Aisha Malik, who emigrated from Pakistan a couple of years ago, Umar Nasser, president of the Ahmadi Muslim Student Association. Also here, Dr. Sundas Ali, who is a Muslim academic from the University of Oxford, and Iman Abu Atta from the organisation Tell Mama, which has been monitoring anti-Ahmadi attacks. Thank you all very much for coming on the programme. Dr. Sundas Ali, what is the difference between a Muslim and an Ahmadi Muslim?
So the belief that the majority of Muslims, which are Sunni Muslims, they believe that there is one God, which is Allah, and the final prophet is Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And Ahmadis believe that there was another prophet after Prophet Muhammad, so Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who was born in Punjab in 1835. So that's the major difference.
Would you agree with that, Aisha? Sorry, Aisha, go first.
Yes, I think broadly speaking that is the main theological difference. I think we have a difference in how we interpret the seal of prophethood, and we believe that the prophet, we believe in the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, is also the second coming of the Messiah that all major religions have been waiting for.
Do you believe that Ahmadis are Muslims?
I belong to Sunni Islam, and I conform to the beliefs that Sunni Islam conforms to. And if I conform to that, then if Sunni Muslims believe that they're not, then I would like, as an academic, as a researcher, I do. I think it's important to speak to everybody and to understand, and I think ultimately at the end of the day it's God who judges who is Muslim and who is non-Muslim. But of course, as a category, as a Sunni Muslim, this is, this, I conform to that belief, but I do always want to be open-minded and speak.
Sure, yes, Umar, it sounds like you're saying he's not, she's not.
I'm nobody to judge. I'm nobody to judge. I do think that people who judge are limited. I don't think human beings can judge who is a Muslim and who is a non-Muslim.
Okay.
I think it's and of course I'm not a religious scholar, but I think I think it's God who ultimately judges. So I don't discriminate against Ahmadis.
All right. But there are a number of Muslims who do discriminate against people like yourself. And what is the danger with that?
Well, the worry is that when you have people saying that Ahmadis shouldn't self-identify as Muslims, that they're not Muslims, that kind of undermines social cohesion, because what it says is they may look like Muslims, they may sound like Muslims, they even think they are Muslims, but they're not Muslims. Don't let them trick you, don't trust them. That kind of thread runs through it, and what that can lead to is sort of a sense of discrimination, and in extreme cases persecution. That's what we see in Pakistan all the time, where our non-Muslim status has been written, apparent non-Muslim status has been written into law.
But sorry to interrupt, but Aisha, you know, we saw in the film that there are Muslims saying, look, Pakistan is totally different. Don't just say what we're seeing in Pakistan, what we're witnessing a little bit of here. Is that right, or is there tension in this country?
Well, I think it's fair to say that what's happening in Pakistan is quite different.
Yes.
I mean, we've had a long history of severe and brutal persecution. We've had our mosques torched and people's homes have been burnt down, and you have to sign a form saying everything you believe in is false to get a Pakistani passport. So it's institutionalized, sustained persecution. Obviously, there's nothing like that. There's no state-sanctioned persecution in the UK. But there have been pockets where, if you like, Muslim-heavy areas, where there are certain communities who, I think this also goes back to the Radio 4 documentary that's now being played about Deobandis and the rise of extremists coming into the UK. I think the larger concern here, for me personally, is that ideology creeping into the UK. And I think with the rise of that extremist ideology, you have certain individuals who do have hate-filled ideology, and they do have.
How does that manifest itself in Britain?
I think the thing to remember is that individuals who have extremist inclinations, they do exist in the UK, and that is a problem of radicalization that we are facing as a community, as the society at large. And that just doesn't threaten Ahmadis per se, that threatens everyone in the community.
Okay, let me bring in Iman then from Tell Mama, which is the organisation monitoring anti-Ahmadiyya attacks. What kind of things have you been seeing, and are these incidents on the rise?
So in the last year we have been seeing an increase in anti-Ahmadi rhetoric that has been promoted both in the online sphere as well as on a street level. And recently, following the unfortunate murder of the shopkeeper Asja in Glasgow, definitely we have seen an increase of attacks taking place on the Ahmadiyya community. We do tend to measure all kinds of attacks that take place on Muslim communities, and we're not in a place to judge who's Muslim and who's not.
Right.
I think it's up to the perception of individual to see who they are, and it's up to God eventually. And
but in terms of monitoring the incidents, are you able to pinpoint who is the people who are perpetrating the attacks, whether it's verbal or physical?
Absolutely.
Yes. So is it Muslims attacking Muslims?
It comes from all kinds, but yes, that we can see that it's from different sects of the Muslim community that perceive the Ahmadiyyas as non-Muslims, that actually dehumanize them, vilify them, and obviously these messages of hate and promotion of hate and intolerance, they do not fit well with the values of what the UK stands for, or with any community whatsoever. And the concern is that if you continue to play that background noise of these messages, what would that lead to? Would that eventually lead to further hate, further extreme messages going out, further acts of extremism taking place towards this minority community and other communities?
Right. And are you witnessing, or are you hearing on university campuses these kind of negative experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some more severe incidents. So, for instance, after one of our events in a major University of London university, the actual ex-president of the Islamic Society there gave out leaflets after one of our events calling to our audience, calling for our death. We've had students physically assaulted. Now, those are the kind of exceptions, those aren't the rule. But at a lower level, you do have a sense of anti-Ahmadi prejudice. So Islamic societies have sent out emails saying don't go to our events, they have deviant views, and they link to extremist websites. And you know, even on a personal level, I remember when I was at my university, I remember I once received an email from the Islamic Society saying you're not allowed to use the word Islam in your event titles. So we were doing an event called Women in Islam, which we hoped all Muslims could get behind. They said you should call it Women in Ahmadiyya, which I found very strange.
And what did you do?
Well, I said you don't have a trademark on the name Islam. I mean, people are allowed to self-identify as they wish. Ultimately, as Sundar said, this will be in the eyes of God, who is a Muslim, who isn't. We shouldn't start groups shouldn't start imposing on other groups what they can and can't call themselves.
Sorry, go on, Aisha.
I think an important point, an important message that's coming through here, Victoria, is one thing, that there's a small group of individuals who have hijacked a certain portion of the religion, and they've assumed the mantle, if you were, of God's faithful fatwa givers, and they have ordained it upon themselves that they know what the correct theological position is, and they know that they are right. And scholars of Islam have described this phenomenon as holding the moral insights of the text hostage. Now, ironically, the irony is twofold here. On the first level, it's ironic because this authority to compel or to judge was denied even to the Prophet himself, the most revered person in Islamic history. In the Quran, the God says that you are just an admonisher. You have no authority, or you have no authority to compel them. And secondly, in what is probably the greatest testament to human rights discourse in Islam, that religion and your spirituality is your rights that you owe to God, and that is the exclusive space between man and God. And only God has the right to forgive transgressions or judge who is a Muslim or a Christian, who is not a Muslim.
Before we go on briefly, because we've got a few minutes left, and I do want to talk about possible. Go on, do finish. Sorry.
No, I was saying, and I think the more important rights are the rights that you owe to other human beings. And he says that I will not forgive those rights.
Right.
So it's kind of ironic that these people who are engaging in violent jihad.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think it's a very unfortunate situation that Muslims are facing at the moment, or Islam as a religion, that there are so many differences, and even the difference of Sunni and Shia. I think the differences is what prevents unity and an effective leadership. And there are so many vital, grave issues that need to be addressed in the Muslim community today, such as extremism and terrorism, and we're not able to address these issues because there is this division, and very real division. It's leading to violence in Pakistan, it's in Indonesia, and now I think it's been carried to the UK. And there are just bigger problems, fundamental issues that Muslims need to focus on.
But in terms of this particular tension that we're talking about this morning, Iman, what are the solutions? How could this be resolved, or is it just going to be there forever?
I think we can have our disagreements on theology and theological explanations and interpretations. This is fine. This is the place to actually talk about it. This is in the UK. Each one can express their own opinion, but I think there's a line that we should not cross, and that's when we're inciting hate towards different types of communities.
But that is already happening. That line is being crossed. So how do we get people to pull back from that?
So it's promoting the messages that we have of tolerance in the UK. It's promoting messages of unity that we have, that we're standing all collectively against any kind of hate, no matter what the community is. No one is in a place to judge any other person, whether they're Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim, or any other religion.
People, though,
absolutely, absolutely. But I think promoting the messages of unity, promoting what people stand for, promoting what we stand for as universal values is important. And actually tackling these messages of hate, because if you don't tackle these messages of hate and stand against them and talk about them and actually open that space to talk about them and highlight them, because the problem is with the anti-Ahmadiyya rhetoric that's out there, no one is rebutting these hatred messages, and that's a problem. The more you continue with no rebuttal, that's going to be a noise in the background.
There's a lot of misinformation about the community out there. So it's often said we deny the finality of Prophet over the Prophet Muhammad. That sounds like a very big thing, because they say, well, that's a fundamental tenet. We affirm that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the final law-bearing messenger, and that there's no religion after Islam. What we do say, though, and we join with other Muslims in saying that there can be follower prophets who simply reform Muslims after that and bring people back to God. They don't change Islam. That's for us what we believe Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, was. So it's that kind of education, I think, of young Muslims in particular, which is really important, because once people start thinking for themselves and start realizing, actually, this isn't something so terribly different, this is actually something very approachable, then I think that will...
But even if it is terribly different, we would never explain or justify or excuse, violence.
Violence is never justified.
Diversity is actually in our difference. I mean, the difference enriches our diversity. It's important to have it.
I think Iman makes an important point. I think religion, instead of being used as a vehicle of violence, religion should be used to spread love and compassion. I think, like you said, human diversity should come together, people of all faiths, to promote love and peace in society. And And I think if that your religion is not teaching you that, then you're not doing any service to your faith.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming on the programme. Thank you. Thank you. Wish you all the best.